president did an interview with Time magazine the other day about truth-telling. The Washington Post fact-checker says during that conversation, again, about truth-telling, the president said at least 14 things that were demonstrably false. When Time's Michael Scher raised credibility questions during the conversation, the president played this card, quote, "I can't be doing so badly because I'm president, and you're not." He is president, but just 65 days into his presidency, the can't be doing so badly part is a little bit more than debatable. Last week was a horrible week for the president, and he began it in precarious political standing. Take a look here. Just 37% of Americans approved of the job he was doing as president heading into last week. 56% disapproved. That's according to a Quinnipiac University poll. I can't believe those numbers are any better entering this week if 37 was the beginning of last week. I want to get to the credibility issue, but just moments ago, we were having a conversation earlier about the lack of Republican unity in these organizations that have spent the last 8 years opposing President Obama, and they're say no organizations. Well, the president this morning just tweeted, Democrats are smiling in D.C. that the Freedom Caucus, with the help of Club for Growth and Heritage, have saved Planned Parenthood and Obamacare. So you were noting during the break when we were reading this, the other day he was careful not to criticize Republicans.
That's very much a shift. Right before he went into the Oval Office to give us the remarks on Friday about why this bill went down, he was told, focus on the Democrats. Do not attack fellow Republicans. And he kept to that promise. And he spread the blame out to everybody when it came to Democrats. But he applauded Republicans. He had Tom Price and Mike Pence standing right behind him. He said, I'm not going to recommend getting rid of Paul Ryan. He told me that in the Oval Office. Now he's shifting a little bit. He's turning away from just keeping that blame on Democrats, and now he's starting to focus on Republicans.
And this often happens. He says one thing, and then as things settle in with him and he sort of processes what's happening, he changes his focus. So let's come back to the credibility question, and you could raise it again in the context of what happened yesterday. In the morning, he tweets, watch Judge Jeanine, the day after saying, I'm all with Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan fought hard. Paul Ryan has trouble to deal with. I like Paul Ryan. And Judge Jeanine comes on and says, Paul Ryan must go. That's a credibility question for the president, too, I think. Look at his standing right now. 56% of Americans disapprove of his job performance. 60% say he's not honest. 55% question his leadership skills. 66% say he's not level-headed. Now, he's a new president. We are 65 days in. I want to say repeatedly, Donald Trump has defied every law of political gravity 1,000 times. And so don't put anything in cement. But 65 days in, those numbers are horrible.
Yeah, and there are completely, obviously, paths to climb out of this. But the paths require decisions that we haven't seen him make so far. There is one path that would be controversial and perhaps jeopardize a whole series of Republican leadership situations, but could cement President Trump's popularity if he decided to reach across the aisle and look for commonalities with Democrats. There's another area in which he stops personal attacks on people and brings people together. But if things go on the way that they have been going on, it's hard to see the path.
One interesting nugget from that Quinnipiac poll was that on March 7th, it was 55% of American voters say that they don't trust him. Just now, last week, it's up to 60.
Right. So as they watch, they don't like it. Just 1 second. One of the things, when you raise this credibility question, and you say, why does the president say so many things that are just demonstrably not true, a lot of Trump supporters push back, saying lots of presidents say things that aren't true, and that's certainly true.
We did not, repeat, did not trade weapons or anything else for hostages, nor will we.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Ms. Lewinsky.
Intelligence gathered by this and other governments leaves no doubt that the Iraqi regime continues to possess and conceal some of the most lethal weapons ever devised.
Under the reform I've proposed, if you like your doctor, you keep your doctor. If you like your health care plan, you keep your health care plan. These folks need to stop scaring everybody.
I want to set Bill Clinton aside. It was about a personal issue, and that was a lie, what he said in the Roosevelt Room that day back then. But I want to make this distinction and tell me if you agree that yes, President Reagan was not telling the truth when he said we didn't trade arms for hostages. George W. Bush was not telling the truth when he said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The President of the United States was not telling the truth, President Obama, when he said if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. His aides insist. He was told at the time that that's what was going to happen. But there's a difference between saying Ted Cruz's father helped kill Kennedy, right?
There's a total difference.
And then crediting the National Enquirer. Well, don't blame me. I read it in the National Enquirer.
Right. There's a whole scale of truth here that is entirely different. When President Bush was saying those words, I was actually in the same room. He was, it was the beginning of the Iraq War. He believed what he was saying at the time. He got faulty intelligence, as we learned later. I mean, the New York Times editorial page endorsed that. They agreed with that. I think this is entirely different than what the president is doing right now. The whole idea of truth is simply out the window. We saw it with the British, suggesting that the British spy agencies were somehow involved in this surveillance game.
But Judge Napolitano said they were.
Judge Napolitano said they were, and he's not been on the air since. So the
But how
reality
many
here is
times did Trump think that he was believing himself when he said on the campaign trail, Obamacare repeal and replace is going to be the first thing I do? He believed it at the time, and it was the first thing.
And he also said, who knew it would be this hard? And that may be the most honest thing he said.
Is there a price to pay? We talk about this sometimes separately because he did win. He did this during the campaign too, and he won. But is there a price to pay now that we're in the governing mode where you don't? He said we'd be tired of winning. We're not tired of winning yet because he hasn't had any big wins yet. Does this get connected at some point?
Yeah, I mean, because one, you lose political capital in trying to sell your agenda. How much political capital does he have on the Hill right now? I'm not sure how much at all. And look, this is a president that has not been tested by any significant real outside event that has shifted his presidency in his first 2 months in office. What happens when there's a real crisis, domestically or internationally, in which he has to make a very difficult decision? And how does he sell the American public and the international public to get behind America's direction? And if his credibility continues to fall, that's going to be much, much harder to sell the public on something like this.
But
This has significant ramifications.
Well, the credibility question was never sort of like part and parcel of his popularity and his rise. It was his ability to connect emotionally with people, to tap into the feelings of frustration they were having with the status quo. It wasn't like people were like rallying around Donald Trump because they were like, you can take every single thing he says to the bank, right? So the kind of rhetorical misstatements and like, oh, whatever, that was baked into the campaign. The difference is that when you're governing instead of campaigning, there's a different broad expectation in crisis moments like this. Does it change his numbers significantly below 37? Not necessarily, but does it impede his ability to get above 50% again? Maybe.
But he's president, and you're not.
And I'm not.
You're not.